Guys, I've got good news and I've got bad news. The bad news is that we all just got another month older. The good news is now that June is over with, we have another top 5 flips for the month of June 2024. This month I had significantly less sales than I did last month, but I think there's a couple factors as to why. The first and the major one being I was waiting on a massive PSA return of 108 cards, of which I recently made a video, but I was waiting on those cards for a while and they didn't show up until the end of June, just before July started, so my inventory didn't have a fresh restock during the month. The last reason is I had card party last month, so I actually shut my eBay down for a few days in the middle of the month to attend card party because I was going to be trying to sell some things while I was at the event. And whenever you put your eBay into that time away or you shut it down for an extended period of time, it tends to disrupt a little of the algorithm. So you'll see whenever I come back from vacations, I always tend to put things on sale to kind of juice up that algorithm again after shutting down the eBay store. But you guys probably already know this video is going to cover my top 5 flips for the month of June. Before we hop in, I just want to remind you that the market can move quickly and aggressively. Just because these flips worked for me in June 2024 does not mean that they will work at whatever time you're watching this. Make sure to do your own research before making any purchases. So for the month of June, I sold 58 cards for the total sales price of $3,310.29. After you subtract my total cost with eBay's fees, I profited $997.73 for a profit margin percentage of 55.8. Now let's jump into the flips. The number 5 flip is this PSA 9 Mega Charizard EX. I feel like this is actually the first PSA 9 that we've seen in these flips videos so far. This card came out in the XY series set Wild Blaze that released in 2014, a set heavily revolving around Charizard. I realized I made a little bit of an error when I was writing out the population for this card because most of the cards so far have been PSA 10s, so I wrote down the 10 population, which is 941 at PSA. But the population for a PSA 9 is actually 165. A lot of times I feel like in English, a lot of the pops kind of flip, where you might have a lot more PSA 9s than you do PSA 10s. But I would say the majority of the time in Japanese, especially stuff fairly modern, you're going to see way more PSA 10s. If it's a card worth grading, then you are going to see PSA 9s because the quality of Japanese cards is generally far superior to that of English. I found a pretty clean copy of this card for $35.02, so my total cost after $15 grading was $50.02. Obviously, when I sent this in, I thought it had a chance at a PSA 10, but surprisingly, even in a PSA 9, this card sold for $110. And after you subtract the total cost and eBay's fees, my total profit on the card was $44.84. That is a profit margin percentage of 89.6%. Typically in these top 5 flips videos, I also find it interesting to talk about how long it actually took to sell the card after I graded it and whether or not it would have been beneficial to auction this card instead of selling it by it now. I got this card back from PSA on May 16th and I sold the card on June 5th. So just about 3 weeks, well under a month, to sell this card, which is exactly what I'm looking for. The most recent auction for this card sold for $91, which would have left me with still a decent profit margin percentage at the end of the day, but there were also a few auctions in April that sold between $65 and $75, which would have put me in a little more world of hurt. So we continue to see that having a little bit of patience and using buy it now instead of auctions tends to result in a higher sales price. The number 4 flip of this month is this PSA 10 Gyarados from the 2015 Japanese set Bandit Ring. This card has a pretty high PSA 10 population of 750. Crazy how I say that that's high when the Van Gogh Pikachu is approaching 50,000 total graded cards and still sells for more than this. Absolutely wild. This card is actually illustrated by one of my favorite Pokemon illustrators, Tokia, and I just found out recently that they haven't illustrated a card since Rebel Clash. Why, Tokia? Come back and make an alternate art, please. That would be so awesome. I really like this artwork because one of the best artworks in the hobby, in my opinion, is the Shining Gyarados from the Neo sets. And this artwork feels like a little bit of a callback to that artwork because you've got the Gyarados coming out of the Lake of Rage, scaring the fisherman, very similar to that Shining Gyarados from back in the day. I bought this card for $24.99, and after the $15 grading fee, my total all-in cost was $39.99. I was able to sell the card for $104.49. Kind of crazy because the last time I sold this card was in March, and I have one other sale from last year. Both of those sold for $140 on eBay. So you can see that these cards are coming down significantly and the market pretty volatile right now on PSA 10 Japanese. So just another reminder to proceed with caution. After taking out my total cost and the fees from eBay, my total profit was $46.53 on this Gyarados. That's a profit margin percentage of 116.4%. We got this Gyarados back from PSA on May 16th and it sold on June 25th. So it only took about a month and a half to sell, which is great. And the most recent auction to sell back in June sold for $90 flat. In this case, the margin between the last sold auction and the last sold bin really isn't that bad, and I would have come out in good shape in either scenario. The number 3 flip for June is this PSA 10 Mewtwo Level X. This card came from the Mewtwo Level X collection pack and has a PSA 10 population of 357. This Mewtwo Level X collection pack released in 2009 and was a Japanese exclusive 12-card half deck that was designed to give players the opportunity to use previously rare promotional cards. I picked this card up for $26.30. That means after the $15 grading fee, my total all-in cost was $41.30. Because this card came out in a half deck, it's not nearly as rare as a lot of Level X's that actually came from the sets. But if you've opened a lot of these half decks, it actually can be pretty difficult to get a lot of these cards in mint condition. With all that being said, I sold the card for $104.49. And that means after my total cost and when you remove the eBay fees, my total profit was $48.29. That is a profit margin percentage of 116.9%. I got this card back from PSA on May 16th and sold the card on June 24th. So only took a little over a month to sell, which is absolutely fine with me. The last auction to sell of this card sold back in April for $76.16. So again, the buy it now process reigns supreme and our card sold for over $30 more than the most recent auction. The number 2 flip is this PSA 10 Tyranitar from the 2007 set Secret of the Lakes. This card's PSA population is very different from the other ones we've seen so far. There's only 50 in PSA 10. I feel like there's a couple sets in the Diamond and Pearl era where they were really trying out the 3D style looking graphics and illustrations, and I really don't like them all that much. There are a lot of derpy artworks in Secret of the Lakes that are utilizing that 3D style, but they got Fukuda, the guy who did all of the gold stars, to come in and do the Tyranitar for this set. That's why the Tyranitar kind of looks like a gold star here. This is a really cool artwork for Tyranitar, and it's definitely a standout artwork from Secret of the Lakes. I have been looking for this card for a while in PSA 10 condition, and I finally found it for only $14.18. So after the $15 grading fee, I am all in for $29.18. This seems kind of crazy because it's an amazing Fukuda artwork, Tyranitar, popular Pokemon, PSA 10, only 50 in population, and I only sold the card for $95. So after you remove my total cost of the card and the eBay fees, my total profit was $50.71, and that's a profit margin percentage of 173.8%. A lot of these cards actually came from the same submission. So this card I got back from PSA on May 16th, again, just like a lot of other cards we've seen so far, and it sold on June 21st. So really only about a month and a half of sitting on the eBay store. The last one of these Tyranitars to sell at auction sold back in May for $82.69. So once again, not too far off, and I still would have come out ahead. So we made about $13 more just hanging out, having it sell, buy it now. Last but not least, the number 1 flip of the month was this PSA 10 Lugia with that fantastic swirl right underneath the wing. This Lugia comes from the 2007 Japanese set Shining Darkness and has a total PSA 10 population of only 88. Despite this card kind of having a bleh 3D illustration, it is Lugia, and Lugia is a super popular Pokemon. Usually I buy this card for more than this, but this one I found for a great deal of $15.90. That means after the grade fee, my total cost is $30.90, which is kind of crazy for this particular Lugia. I then was able to sell the card for $220. And after you subtract the total cost and the eBay fees, my total profit was $158.66. That is one of our highest profit margin percentages so far of 513.5%. This card once again came back to me from PSA on May 16th in that same submission as the Tyranitar, and it sold just 3 weeks later on June 3rd. This is also one of our largest auction to buy it now disparities, as the last auction to sell was a few weeks after mine sold buy it now for $155.50 from PSA's own eBay account. So we were awarded for our patience selling buy it now instead of auction with $65 extra. So there you have it. Those are my top 5 flips of June 2024. Let me know in the comments below what your month was like selling Pokemon cards and what your best flips were. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and if you missed last month's top flips video, check it out right here.